Welcome to the Podcast Editing and Support Show. My name is Dave. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go. We're going to start the episode right now. Happy to have you here. Let's do this. All right, we're back with part 4 around our Podcaster Planner mini-series. Glad you're here. My name is Dave. Hope you're doing well. Hope your podcast business is growing. And you haven't even started yet. You're in the perfect place. You're here at the Podcast Editing and Support Show. There's other podcasts about podcast editing, but you know what? They usually die off because they run out of things to talk about. But here you and I are together again, talking about our business and growing our business together, you and I. So we got each other, right? You got me, I got you. All right, let's keep going with this. I love this. We're on part 4, and today we're going to be talking about mastering the actual recording process, the actual way that we do the recordings with our podcast hosts, and how we as an editor can, again, be better and more than just an and eliminator. We have more service to offer to our podcast hosts, which will grow our business, help us serve more podcasters, make the podcast industry better by being the right editor and support person to these amazing podcasters that we serve. So you're in the right spot. We're going to talk about the recording process and how you can help to make things run smoothly. Are you ready? Okay, well, let's jump in. So all of these mini-series episodes we're doing are all around a single document that I have that I use for my podcasters. I encourage other podcast editing and support people to use as a framework, especially in the early days of your podcast, to kind of guide you as a roadmap to doing great episodes, creating great communication between podcaster and editor and support people so that we're all on the same page, literally, with this document, working towards the same goal. And that's the idea for this. The recording process is probably one of the most important things that's going to happen in any podcast. This is where the magic happens. This is where everything comes together, whether it's a solo episode, co-hosted, interview, panel discussion. This is where it all comes down to the thing. It's the recording, the actual recording of the video, the audio, whatever it is. And we want to make sure that this is the best possible beginning. The more work we do up front, as far as controlling the process, controlling the outcomes, checking on audio, video quality, all of those things that we do at the beginning is going to make the editing process so much better, cheaper, faster, because we did all the work up front. To do it all in post, to do it all after the fact, there's a lot of work that goes involved in that, a lot of fixing. To fix it at the beginning is way better than to fix it at the end. As a podcast editor and virtual assistant, support person for podcasting, your role is crucial in ensuring the highest quality output for the podcast hosts and clients that you work with. Understanding the intricacies of the recording process will enable you to be a better guide and support for your clients. This is going to result in a professional grade episode, better retention, better interaction, better reach, and I wanted to share with you an expanded look at the recording process tailored to those working behind the scenes. We're going to talk about, first of all, recording your intros and your outros separately from the actual recording of your episode as a podcaster. Recording your podcast intros and outros after you've done the recording of the actual episode is probably one of these things that make me wonder why no one is doing this to scale. It seems like we try to record everything in the moment. I'm going to record the intro, I'm going to record the episode, and record the outro all in one take. First of all, when we come to the recording as a host, let's do this in the form and context of a guest. We know that our guest is here. We're going to record the intro and then have the conversation, then record the outro. If you were going to say in your intro, "Hi, welcome to the Podcast Editing and Support Show. Today my guest is Dave, and we're going to cover A, B, and C today. Dave, welcome to the podcast." Now, I've set up the expectation that we're going to cover A, B, and C. What if we don't cover any of that? What if the conversation goes in a totally different direction? We don't know what we're going to talk about in advance, even if we plan it out, because a conversation may take a turn which would be interesting for the audience, and we want to go there. I tell my guests most of the time on most of my shows, or when I work with podcasters, tell your guests before you turn on the mics and before you hit record, listen, I'm going to record the intro after we're done. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I'll know better about what we talked about after we've recorded the episode. Right now, I'm just guessing what we're going to cover, but I'll know for sure after the fact. So I'm going to lean on the fact that we're going to be doing this recording intros and outros later. So my advice to you as a guest is we're just going to jump into the conversation as if the intro has already happened. So we're going to do this. I'm just going to turn the mic on. Are you ready to go? I'm ready to go. Okay. So Dave, tell me about podcasteditingandsupport.com. What is it that you do? See, we're right in the conversation. There's no, hey, how's the weather where you are? I don't know. What did you have for breakfast? I don't know. What's the name of your cat? Okay, we can just eliminate all of that stuff. We can also eliminate the, hi, welcome to the show, Dave. Tell everybody what you do. Who are you, Dave? Right? You're a better expert on you than I am, and I didn't do my homework. Can you tell us what you do? Those are bad intros, everybody. So record the intro after. So you have the recording, you're all done, your guest leaves, and then while you're set up, you do the intro and your outro right there. You can be like, hey, thank you for being here on the show. Today's episode, we have Dave on the podcast. He's the host of the Podcast Editing and Support Show. He also hosts 7 other podcasts. Wow. Dave comes on the show and he's talking about this, this, and this. This is what we covered. Here we go. That's your intro. And while you're still set up, do the outro. Dave was just on the show. That was a great episode. What I liked is Dave talked about A, B, and C. And you know what I found surprising is when he talked about this, it really resonated with me. I wonder what resonated with you. Reach out to me through my website. Let's talk about this. What did you like about having Dave on the show? And what was your main takeaway from our conversation? I just recorded the intro and the outro. My guest is gone, and I'm doing it now. You know better what you've talked about. You know better what's happened, and you can summarize it better because it's in the moment. Don't wait 3 weeks after the fact to try to remember and recreate the excitement about that episode. Record it after your guest leaves while you're set up. It works really well, and it makes for better, more concise intros and outros. So record your intros and outros separate from the content. Try it. See if it works. Try it for your own show because you have your own podcast, right? Try it for your own show and see how it works. It's kind of great because the other beautiful thing is sometimes we screw up the intros and the recording, and that throws us off in the entire interview because we keep thinking about, oh, I could have done that better. Save yourself some grief, record it after the fact. Having your intros and outros recorded separately allows you for more consistency across your episodes. Your episodes will look and feel the same, which is great. As well, it enables you to easily update them without re-recording the entire episode. It also provides some flexibility in your episode structure. So there's a lot of advantages to recording your intros and outros separately. It's why it's on my sheet. It's why it's on my guide. So it's there for you to consider. If you like it, great. If you don't, you can pass on it. It's a suggestion, but I would love for you to try it. For your own show, for a podcaster that you work with, see how it works. Let me know. The next part is to follow best practices. So what are some best practices around the recording process? Glad you asked. First, maintain a library. Keep a collection of various intros and outros for different episode types or seasons. This is really interesting because then you can pull from these. What I have for my recordings is I have a master template for every podcast. It is the bare bones of every episode. It has the music, It has my intro script if it's pre-recorded. It has a empty blank track where I would do my recording, which is what I'm doing right now in Audacity, a free program which you don't have to pay monthly for, because monthly payments kind of take a chunk out of your paycheck. Try Audacity. It's free. I don't make any money from it because it's free. So I have a blank track. That's where I'm recording right now. I have my intro track. I have my outro track. And I have my music already pre-faded in, pre-faded out. All of that stuff's ready to go. And I can then swap out. So I have on my Living the Next Chapter podcast for my outros, I have 4 pre-recorded outros. One if it's a solo episode, just me. I have another outro if I have a guest. And I have one about my community. And I have one about supporting the show with financial donations via my Buy Me a Coffee. And what I do is I just move them around. If I don't have a guest, I'm going to use my solo outro or one of my other 2. If I have a guest, then I'm going to use the guest outro. That's kind of how I do it. They're all pre-recorded. I delete the ones I don't need, but every time I open my template, everything I need, all of my assets are in one location. I delete what I don't need, and I record in the program and then save it as the new episode title, and always keep a blank, bare bones template for every episode. I'm not recreating the wheel with a blank document every time I come to record. It's a great way to maintain all of the assets in one location. You don't have to go looking for what was the music I used, what was the outro, what was the intro. Put it all in one document, save it as a template, open, resave it, and off you go. Also make sure that you're using clear naming conventions so that you understand which outro is for which and what intro is for which. You can actually put it in the name or the title. In Audacity, we have titles for each of our tracks. I can rename the title and give it a title of what that is without having to listen. I know this is this and that is that. It's really simple. The other thing is to do quality checks as a best practice and regularly review the elements to ensure they remain relevant, on brand. They're not dated, where you're talking about Christmas and it's the middle of August. You want to make sure that everything you're using is relevant to your audience in the moment for every recording. So keep it as generic as you can, as evergreen as you can, and that's going to help you to have better episodes, better engagement, and it's a great best practice around your intros and your outros. The next part is guiding your client through the process. I encourage podcasters that I work with to record multiple versions of their intros, their outros, all of those assets, so that we have some options. Maybe my host is not having a great day vocally and they're struggling. I have some pre-recorded things that I can use that I can pull in as intros and outros, for example. As well, suggest updating their intros and outros periodically to help keep the content fresh. So don't use the same intro and outro over many, many episodes and it becomes boring for your audience. Keep that in mind. And the one thing I would suggest as a little bonus side here is sometimes your audience is going to press play on a podcast and binge listen like from the beginning all the way through 100 episodes. They're going to listen to in a row, which is amazing. But when they hear the exact same outro and intro back to back, back to back, back to back, it is mind-numbing to hear the exact same thing in an intro that you hear in an outro. A terrible practice because of the binge factor of a podcast. You want to make sure that your listeners aren't annoyed by a very long intro, a very long outro, drawn out, overdone. Let's just get to what we're getting to as quick as possible. So keep that in mind because your audience might binge listen to the podcast. Don't frustrate your audience with long intros and outros. And please don't just do the same intro and then paste it at the end as an outro. Very frustrating when you listen back to back. Keep it in mind. As well, you can advise your client on maintaining their energy levels by doing segments in the recording. To be up and on for 45 minutes straight with no breaks can be exhausting. and you'll feel near the end of the episode their energy levels reducing. If you record in chunks, then like I'm doing here on this show, you can then take a break, walk away, come back, and record the next piece. You're not doing it all the time, in full, every time. I've spent many, many, many days in recording studios for my music, working with bands, working with artists, working with singers. We don't record the song in one take, one shot. We do it in chunks, and we surgically move things around. We get the vocalist to do that outro like 10 times to get the right take. It takes time, and it takes working in chunks. Don't think you have to do everything at once, and don't put pressure on your podcaster to record perfectly with one take, because I don't know about you, but I'm a human, and these breaks help me to reset, be energized, read what's ahead of me, and then come to the mic ready to record the next segment, like I'm going to do right now. What do we do about recording our main content? We got some best practices for you. Here we go. Now, some of these things we're going to lead into what we've already talked about, but it's worth repeating. Some best practices around recording the main content of your podcast. You get beyond the intros and outros. Now we're getting into the meat, all the information that's the most important part of the podcast. I love the ideas of segmentation, breaking long recordings into little manageable segments for easier editing, like I'm doing here. It's a very great way to encourage the content to be rich, vibrant, and with enthusiasm, because your host has a chance to breathe and take a break. The other thing is time tracking. Now, what is this? Using timestamps or markers for important points. Many editing softwares will give you the opportunity to see the time track. So right now when I'm recording this, it's going to be different when you listen. But right now I'm at the 17-minute and 10-second mark in the recording. So I can see where I am even as I'm doing this. It gives me an idea of how much longer I'm going to talk about the episode, how far I'm into the podcast. It's really great. The other thing you can do as a podcast editor and support person is to keep track of key moments that happen during the recording by using these timestamps. You can go with a tool that's going to suggest, I'm using air quotes, suggest key moments in the podcast. But I kind of like just being a human and going, that was a good moment. I'm going to make note of at the 17-minute and 48-second mark, that was gold. I'm going to make a note of that and then use that for my clips, use that for my video clips, my YouTube shorts, my Instagram shorts and reels. I'm going to use that because I made note of it in the moment on behalf of the host who doesn't have time to do that. They're focused on creating great content. You're focused on capturing it and making it sound amazing. The other best practice around recording the main content, backup recording. The fear and sweats that you get when you realize that something didn't record properly, that you're missing your guest track, that something epically failed behind the scenes is scary. When you record with a recording platform online, sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes there are no fixes. So keep that in mind. It's happened to me a few times in the past using some of these great tools that people recommend, but they are tools that are prone to break. We're using the internet. We're using a thing called electricity. Things can happen, and you might not have a control over it. Having a backup recording of what you're doing is going to help you, and I would love for you to save your work as you go. It's a great tip for everything that you do. Stop in your segments, hit save, and then continue. Because the last thing you want to do or see is your computer close down on you when you least expect it. Back up your work. Have some way of recording something in the background so that you have an extra copy of what you're doing. Very important. It's a great best practice. How do we guide our client through the recording of the main content? This is something that you need to step up and be a part of because it's going to help you at the end when you're doing your editing. So how can you guide your client? Well, just for reference, I did just save my file before starting this next segment, just so you know. We can help guide our client by providing a pre-recording checklist. Hey, like what I have, which is the topic of our conversation, correct? On this checklist, you're going to include things like hydration, vocal warm-ups, prepping, reading the materials, mic checks. All of these things are going to be part of your pre-recording checklist. You're also going to advise your client on the optimal recording environments, like a quiet space to record the podcast, no outside noises, no distractions, making sure that the room is record worthy. Make sure you do that. That's part of guiding your client as well. Encourage consistent pacing and energy throughout the recording. We don't talk about this enough, but you need a pace to what you're doing. Remember, your listeners, if they're listening in audio, they don't see you. So your voice is all they have as a point of reference. Pacing is a great way to make your audience stay connected with you, offer some variety. If you think of your favorite songs, they're not one tempo the entire time. There's breaks, there's pauses, there's interesting things happening. The music gets louder and softer. There's somewhere, your voice is going somewhere. And it helps people lean in when you get quiet. And then when you get louder and you get more excited, then they get excited and we're all having a great experience. Pacing is super important. And you can help your podcaster be better at that by planning things out in advance. Another thing we want to focus in on here is the art of interviewing, how to ensure both clear audio for both your host and your guest. As podcast editors, I would strongly advise, wherever possible, that you make this part of your mandatory setup, that you get separate tracks for everyone that's on the podcast. So imagine you have a panel podcast, there's 4 speakers, and they're all on one track. You're going to have people talking over each other. Somebody's going to laugh and snort. Somebody's going to sneeze. Somebody's going to be coughing or choking on their water. A dog is going to make an appearance. There's going to be a phone that's going to ring probably for sure. Some kind of notification. Somebody's going to bump their mic, all on one track. To isolate that noise, that thing that's annoying while someone's speaking is almost impossible. There are tools, but you're going to hear the edit. So I would ask and have you set up, no matter how you're recording, on Zoom, on Riverside, wherever, that you're recording on separate tracks. It's going to make it easier for everyone, especially you, to deliver a great result. Always record host and guest on a separate track. I would ask you to do this 99% of the time. If you have to do it on one track, it's going to be difficult. It can be done, but if you want to do it with ease and efficiency, separate tracks are my favorite friend. So please do that. As well, local recordings are really good as well. For remote interviews, you can use a software that allows for local recording, like Riverside, for example. It records your guest audio on their side. It records your audio on your side and then uploads it after the fact. That's a really good one. There's Boomcaster. That's another one that I would suggest. Those are great. There are even ones that are only audio recording over the internet, so you don't see the person, which is a little bit hard to do sometimes, but it records great audio in the background. If you're interested in any of these tools, reach out. I'll give you my information so you can find these as well. But make sure that it backs up as a local recording. Those I prefer over ones that are internet-based where you have no control. The other one would be to, again, back up your audio. If the guest is recording locally, this is a really great option. And this is where I would say Zoom excels. If you're interviewing somebody that's a podcaster that has a setup who can record locally on their end, and you can record locally on your end, Zoom then becomes your backup. It becomes your fail-safe, and you're only using it to see each other. because I'm recording on my desktop computer and you're recording on yours. So the Zoom recording is irrelevant. I don't even need it. I just want to see you so I know when you're done talking so I can talk. That's probably the best way. In the old days, they would call this a double ender. Weird name. Kind of dumb. I don't really like the name. But just you record on your computer, I'll record on mine, and we'll just put them together. That's probably the best way to get really good audio and use Zoom at the same time. There you go. That one's a freebie. Some best practices around ensuring that you get clear audio for both your host and your guest would include things like a pre-interview tech check. It's just fun to say. Tech check. Make sure you schedule a brief call to test out your audio quality and troubleshoot any issues. If you have a 30-minute recording, then make your appointment 45 minutes in the calendar so you have the first 15 minutes to go over mics, setups, sound, tap the mic, make sure everything's good, the silence is there, everybody has a drink of water, all that stuff, right? Do that in the first 15 minutes and then devote 30 minutes to recording a great episode. That pre-interview tech check, again, fun to say, is really important. And you can make sure that you outline that for your guest. I would include that in any correspondence with the guest, the calendar link, anything like that that you can then provide to them so they come ready to every interview. Prep your guests. Provide them with this checklist. Headphones, microphone, placement, quiet environment, all of those things they need to know. Remember, some of your guests have never done this before, and technology is not their friend, so put it in simple terms and don't over stress them and give them anxiety that you want them to be perfect. They're not joining you from a recording booth. This is their first time on a show, so be kind. The other thing we can do as podcast editors, we talked about this before, is to monitor in the background in real time to step in, pause the recording and go, can you just kind of scooch up closer to the mic because we can't hear you? Can you silence your phone, please? It's gone off 3 times in the recording. You can pause the podcast and step in and do that, and that'll really help your host. How do we guide our client around ensuring clear audio for both the host and the guest? There's several things that we can do to help guide our client. We can help to create a guest prep document with all the technical requirements we've mentioned and best practices. We can advise them on interview techniques that result in really good audio, like allowing pauses, avoiding interruptions, not talking over your guest, not asking 10 questions in one question, asking just one question. Suggest using visual cues in video calls to communicate without interrupting the audio. Sometimes you can use platforms that have chats that are outside of the recording, so you can say, okay, Dave, I'm coming to you after this next point. We can use chat functions. But again, just a little hand gesture to you when you're seeing each other on camera to say the no, you continue, no, you keep going. You can do the little hand thing that goes like you're doing fingers over fingers, like keep going, keep going. Those are things you can do to kind of use visual cues. Those are great ways that you can guide your client to having a better recording. What are some additional considerations for editors and virtual assistants around podcasts, the recording of the content, the main part of the recording of the podcast? What are some additional considerations? Well, here's some. So I'll run through these quick. We have file management, clear file names, using the title and the name of the file. That's really good. Setting up a storage service where they can give you the files, you can give them back. That's great. Quality control. Make sure that you're there developing a post-recording checklist. Implement systems for flagging potential issues. You're going to be the brains behind the content, making sure things run smoothly. So help them with quality control. Always be looking for continuous improvement as a podcast editor. How can we be 1% better every single time we come to the next episode? Regularly reviewing your episodes, getting feedback, having a debriefing. It's kind of like when a football team gets together and watches the game tape. How did that go? Like, did we feel good in that interview? Did we feel good in that solo episode? Did we get it all? Did it sound good? Did it feel good? Did we connect with our audience? continuous improvement. Stay up to date on all updates to your technology, to training, to being better at the tools, understanding your tools. We've talked about that many times. As well, clear lines of communication, very important between you as an editor and the podcast host. Make sure you have crystal clear communication channels where people respond in a timely fashion so people aren't waiting for the next step. As well, prepare in your editing. Create your templates, which we've talked about. Use common editing tasks and streamline your workflow. That's a great tool. As well, develop a system of tracking your edits and revision requests for your client so that you know that we've gone from the editing's done, the client's listening, the client comes back with some requests, and then we're complete. Make sure you're tracking all of that. By mastering these aspects of the recording process, you're going to be able to provide invaluable support to your podcast host clients. You can then ensure that their content is being captured in the best possible way with the best quality, and it's going to help you in your post-production. Your expertise in these little areas combined together will not only improve the final product, but it's also going to make the entire podcasting process smoother, more enjoyable for your clients, meaning that they're going to continue with their show. If they continue with their show, they're going to continue to pay you, and your business will continue to grow. What we don't want is to have somebody jump into podcasting, record 3 episodes, and then ghost us. Just disappear off the planet because they gave up on their show, they're overwhelmed, and you weren't doing enough for them because they didn't know that you could help them in all these things. Make sure that your clients understand that you are not just here to remove ums and ahs, you are here to help them grow their show. That's why we need you as a podcast editor and a support person. The world is your oyster, everyone. Reach out, connect with these podcasters, and be the support person they need for them to grow their show, continue podcasting, and reaching their audience. You have a significant role in this process, and we need you. Thank you for being part of the show. Thanks for listening to the Podcast Editing and Support Show. Visit us at podcasteditingandsupport.com, podcasteditingandsupport.com. We would love to help you find a great podcast editor, or if you want to hire us, we would love to work with you. Podcasteditingandsupport.com. Catch you on the next episode. Take care.